Today I'm taking a look at two of the cooler yellows, Cadmium Lemon and Yellow Light Hansa. They're two different brands. We have Winsor & Newton and we have a Liquitex. Both are professional brands. And I'm going to do some color mixing. This is part of my series where I'm taking a couple colors throughout the color wheel. So two cool leaning yellows today. I've done two warm leaning blues and so on. So you can check those out on my blog or on my YouTube channel. But today it's Cadmium Lemon, Yellow Light Hansa. And I'm going to mix them with a few colors. So Quin Magenta and Cadmium Red are the two red tones. Ultramarine Blue and Phthalo Blue Green shade are the two blue tones, and Burnt Sienna is just a bonus color. And then I will also use Titanium White just to mix lighter versions of each mix, just so you can see some of the undertones. So let's get started. Start with Cadmium Lemon. I'll start with doing just a little value range here. Now yellows are so pale to begin with that it gets pale very, very quickly without adding too much white. There you go. There is a bit of a range for Cadmium Lemon. I've had this tube of Cadmium Lemon for a really long time and actually rarely ever use it. As you can see, the Yellow Light Hansa is almost empty. That's the one I usually end up using. Don't really know why, just that's how I've done it. So there is Yellow Light Hansa straight out of the tube. Add a bit of white, pale it down. Do one more. And there you go. Both are very bright yellows. Okay, Quin Magenta. So I'll do two mixes of each color. This first one leans more towards having more Quin Magenta in it. And the next mix will have less. So there it is. And there it is with a bit of white. And now the mix where it leans more heavily to more Cad Lemon. And add a bit of white. I'll just add a little dab of Quin Magenta, just pure, just so we know what we're dealing with. Now we're going to go to Cadmium Red. So this leans more towards having more red in it. And we'll do a mix with a bit of white. So you can compare between the Quin Magenta and the Cad Red to see the differences. Now, one of the things to keep in mind as I show you, I don't necessarily put exactly the same amount of each color in. I'm just kind of making just a quick mix of each shade. So there's Cadmium Red, but with more Cadmium Lemon in it. And some white. Now, when you're mixing Cadmium Red in with Cadmium Lemon or any of the yellows, Cadmium Red is really overpowering. So you have to be a little bit careful with how much you add because it's trickier to get a pale version with more yellow than it is to get with a lot of the red, just because it just overpowers so quickly. Ultramarine Blue. So this is leaning a little bit more toward Ultramarine Blue, but very clearly a green. Add a bit of white. And here's Ultramarine Blue, leaning a bit more towards the yellow. add a bit of white to that one as well. Both are really great greens. Ultramarine blue leans more red, whereas cad lemon leans more towards green and blue, so you get a bit more of the muted versions of the greens. Now we'll move on to phthalo blue green, and it's a much brighter green, and that's because the phthalo blue green and cadmium lemon are pretty close together on the color wheel, so you end up with less of a muddy hue and much brighter hue. So if you're looking for vivid greens, these are good color combinations to try. So here is the phthalo blue green mixed with the cad lemon, leaning more towards the cad lemon. Oh, you can hear my cat. She's hanging out under the desk right now. And there it is with a bit of white. And then one last pair of mixes for the cad lemon. So there's the burnt sienna, leaning more towards the burnt sienna. And a paler version. And then one leaning more towards the, having more of the yellow in it. Now I'll do one last mix with that last version, just with white added. So that right there is all of the cadmium lemon mixes that I'll do today. There's obviously plenty of other colors that you could get in between, just in the range with these two colors. But this gives you a bit of an idea of how this will look. I'm just gonna add a little bit of the pure colors on each of these. I always forget. Oh, my cat. She was sitting on a box of paper and it really creaks every time she moves. There's phthalo blue green, the pure color, and let's do the burnt sienna. Now I'll just quickly add the cad red. I always seem to forget when I'm in the middle of my mixes to put the pure color. And a quick dab of the quin magenta. Okay, so now let's move over to the yellow light Hansa. Start with the quin magenta mix where it leans a bit more towards the quin magenta. Add some white. You can see the orangey tones. Kind of a pinky orangey tone. And then a version where it leans more towards the yellow light Hansa. Get it a little paler there. There you go. It's a very orangey, goldy color. Now, cad red. Again, leaning more towards the cadmium red, and this red was very powerful when I was mixing. So just be careful when you're mixing. It can be easy to add way too much red. And there it is, a little bit whiter. Let's add a bit more white. And now a version where it is leaning more towards the yellow. Let's just add a bit more white than that. There you go. Now, one thing to keep in mind too is I'm painting this directly just onto sketchbook paper, so it will look a little bit different on canvas. I'm also doing fairly thin layers, so you can see maybe more translucency than you might do when you're typically painting, but it does depend how you paint. So here it is, ultramarine blue mixed with the yellow light Hansa, leaning more towards the having a bit more of the ultramarine blue. Add a bit of white to show the undertones, or show a different version as well. Oh, there you go. And now one where it leans more towards having more of the yellow. And the pale version of that. Now, phthalo blues, again, these are going to be your brighter greens because the two colors are pretty close together on the color wheel. That's a really nice, bright, vivid green. And here it is with a bit of white so you can see the undertones. Now for the version with leaning a bit more towards the yellow, it's quite bright. And add white. Oh, I just need to mix a bit more of that. Didn't quite have enough. Add a bit of white. There you go. A bit more white. And last but not least, the burnt sienna mixes. So here it is with a bit more of the burnt sienna. And add a bit of white to that. Here it is with a bit more of the yellow. Oh, I didn't mix enough again. Let me just do a quick mix again. Okay, there it is. Leaning more towards the yellow. It's a really warmed up version of the yellow Hansa light. And here it is with some white added to it. So there you go, there's a range of some of the colors that you can get using either cadmium lemon. Here's the tube that I used, or the yellow light Hansa. Not dramatically different. In the future, I'm almost out of this tube, so I'll use this up and then I'll use up the cadmium lemon, but I probably will end up buying yellow light Hansa in the future just because cadmium I know has some toxicity issues, so I'll probably slowly move my way away from most cadmiums when I don't feel the need for them, because I don't really see enough of a difference between the two to really stick with the cadmium lemon versus the yellow light Hansa. But otherwise, both are great for mixing a range of greens. Some nice, really, really bright, vivid greens. It's really fantastic. So anyways, here's a view of some of the colors that you can mix.